I'm Justin Osborne. I perform as Susto, and I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. I got interested in environmental issues when I slowed down my touring at the beginning of the pandemic. And I started kind of self-auditing, realizing how much traveling I was doing and what the kind of impacts of that had been. That was kind of brought on by the birth of my daughter. Just kind of realizing that there is these whole new generations of people that are going to inherit the earth from all of us, and kind of feeling a compulsion to want to do whatever I can to leave it in as good a shape as we can. I feel like there's a lot to be done, and one person can only do so much, but it certainly got me interested in things. And so I'm really passionate about the environment, specifically about transportation and ways to make transportation cleaner and just healthier for humanity and the earth. Well, I think I definitely came kind of into early adulthood with a certain set of values and views that were shaped pretty much by my family and the community that I grew up in. And environmentally, as a kid, I was exposed to outside a lot. I spent a lot of time in the woods, like walking through the swamp. My parents are both from a rural area, so like being outside and just like being in nature was an important thing to us, even though we didn't go all over the country or the world to new places. Like right in our backyard, we spent a lot of time outside. And so whenever I started touring as a way to kind of see more of the planet and more of the country, like I started taking time to explore those natural settings, like in faraway places all over the country and then all over the world eventually too. And so my view just like evolved to kind of encompass the fact that like I don't not only love this place that I love because it's where my family's from, where I grew up, where I have all these memories, but also love all these other places that are new and foreign to me because they're not that. They're someone else's backyard. And in a way, the whole planet is all of our backyard. And so I guess just I've really had experienced that feeling and connection to nature like grow, I guess is the best way. It's like, and it's become a bit more complex as far as like, taking time to go to school and learn why, how systems in the environment are connected, why things that we do as humans can affect the environment, and how those effects can in turn come back to affect us again. And so I guess it's just I've developed a deeper understanding of that, how we as human beings and as a society are connected to the environment, how our actions impact the environment, and like I said, how those impacts come back to us eventually. And so, that growth and interest has just continued to be there as I've aged. And, I'm 35. I'm not an old person, but I've been fortunate to get to go around and talk to lots of people, meet people with many different views on many different topics. And, I'm also a father, and I've gotten to see a child and experience that kind of love and, that kind of responsibility as well, which, I think responsibility can be developed in lots of different ways. But for me, that was probably the biggest kind of like switch flip where I was like, oh, I need to care a lot more, even if this isn't necessarily going to be my problem. Because, there's someone I care about, and through her, I've developed this whole new love for like the future of humanity as well, and so I think it's just like an evolution of understanding coupled with a growing empathy. And, that's something that hasn't really slowed down for me. I mean, I've definitely hit walls before where I'm like, how am I going to make any kind of meaningful change? But, I also have come to terms with the fact that there's not really a choice not to. It's like you can either try or you can not try. And I think maybe that's just being young at heart or having hope. But I think, hope is something that you don't have to age out of it. Well, I think music can be a really great common ground for people because it can also be used to push one motive or one kind of viewpoint or another. And I've certainly been influenced as a listener and a fan by people, having the strength to say, okay, I'm going to take a stand in my music and I'm going to say this because this is what I've seen and this is how I know in my spirit and in my mind that the world is. But I think, and that can be really helpful, and it's been really helpful to me personally. But I think to an extent, it can be dangerous too. And so, like, I've definitely used my platform as an artist to say things that might have been controversial. There were things that I felt, and maybe things I felt at the time. I've said things on recorded albums that I don't necessarily feel anymore, and that goes for politically, philosophically, and even personally, spiritually, across the board. Humans, we evolve through our lives, right? But I think, music can be used as a place for people to come together and find what they have in common. And like the whole point of this show, finding the common ground and standing on it together. And because that's how we have to stand on that ground to figure out where we're going next. And, if that brings on changes through the political structures, that's great. If it brings on changes just in someone's everyday life and how they interact with their community and the people around them, that's great too. Like change doesn't have to come in one specific form. It can come in, all these different ways. And I think using the fact that we music is something that cross-culturally humanity has in common, right? Whether it's, genres are different, but like music and our kind of attraction to music as humans is something that is universal. And so kind of taking advantage of that and using it to create a space where people don't feel like it's us versus them. It's like, we have this problem. We can solve this problem. So for me, I think that's kind of the importance of music. And, I wouldn't say there's one direction to take it in or another as far as like structural political avenues versus, like I said, just kind of like community-based ones. Like I think all of it's valuable. And so any kind of good that can come from that is going to be a net positive. Growing up was like, I grew up in like not a super rigid, structured, rule-based household, but there were definitely rules, right? And even outside of my household, like in school and in my community, there were rules. And I always just felt the need to kind of budge up against those boundaries and see if they stood, or if there was something on the other side and or if they needed to be expanded. And that translates into like choosing to do what I do for a living, which is play music. But a big part of that is traveling and exploring and going out and turning over stones in far off places. And so like I bring that spirit, I think, to like my songs and kind of like show people that like I'm trying my best not to be afraid. I'm trying my best to not be afraid to live my life and not be afraid to fail, not be afraid to experience pain, but also try and live my life in a way that reduces any pain that I cause other people. I think like, just encouraging people not to just get into one groove in life. It's like, all right, this is definitely it. Like, this is how I'm going to live my life for the rest of my life. Like, it's fine to have your habits and things like that. But like, I think as a human being, it's really important to be versatile and be kind of like continue to be like a malleable spirit that like can be influenced by the people and the circumstances around you, and have empathy and be influenced by that. And so I think as much as I can, even sometimes it's like metaphorically, like I'm trying to encourage people to go out and live life and look for things that maybe feel uncomfortable or feel new to them, and try and not necessarily understand it, but at least welcome it and see it, and understand that like the world is a lot bigger than just the little bubbles that we all grow up in, and there's a lot of beauty in that. There's a lot of fear that can be found in that too, because we tend to be afraid of things we don't understand, and I get that. I'm no exception. But I think facing fear and seeing that things are often worse in your mind than they are in reality, and kind of like getting in the habit of reminding yourself of that by facing those fears and facing those things that you don't understand. That's something that I try to encourage in my music, because it's something I try to do in my life as well.
What is the thing that makes you most proud to be an American?
it's weird how like makes me like I almost start crying when you say that. It's weird because I don't think of myself as being like overly patriotic, but you know, like I don't know. I've always been pretty grateful to be an American. I haven't always been proud of it. I am a lot though. I love the 4th of July as much as everybody else. My granddad was like in World War II, all this all this American stuff. I'm proud of like our country kind of like continuing to try and be better, even though, we have to kind of like really live in our mistakes a lot, But I think maybe that's what I like the most about it, especially like whenever I'll go abroad to play shows or something and come back, I'm always really glad to get home because as big of problems as we have, I feel like we are trying our best. And, there's no roadmap for how to do this, how to have like a country made up of all different sorts of people from all over the place and make it work smoothly, right? Like there's no roadmap for that. And sometimes it doesn't work, but we keep trying. And I think there's a beauty in that. It's just like a spirit of exploration, a spirit of hope. It's like trying to push humanity to be better. I think that's kind of a spirit that's part of the American identity, and that's part of it that I love. It's just like that that belief that we can be better than we have been, and so I'd say that's probably what I love the most about America.